So next speaker is Tinatin Gurgenidze. Cool. She is an urban researcher, curator, and author living and working between Tbilisi and Berlin. She is the co-founder and one of the artistic directors of the Tbilisi Architecture Biennale and has established the alternative researching and learning projects Common Territories. Tinatin is one of the founders of the SHE, and she is also an author of several publications and articles in journals as Architecture Review, for example. She will introduce her experience from Georgia, so please welcome. And she might be bringing a different approach, but the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. My presentation will be quite different, I think, from the rest, but was supposed to talk about transformation, and that's what I'm going to do. The transformation that happened in our local context in Georgia, in Tbilisi in particular. I've been researching one particular neighborhood, which is called Gldani in Tbilisi, which was built on an empty territory as the rest of this kind of large housing estates all over. So the image that you can see actually could be anywhere else where there is a city with a little bit of hills. But the most, what I'm mostly interested is what happened when the system changed and the Soviet Union broke up. What happened to these neighborhoods? So there are like different kind of transformations, top down or bottom up, I'm just concentrating to show you what happened in our local context. And I will not show all the images from this neighborhood, rather I will just show more examples of informal architecture and urban space in the city and tell you like why and how it started. So actually the first impulse to make the changes was taken by the state itself. It was just before the breakup of the Soviet Union, when there were already a lot of protests for the independence and
please say to,
yes. Sorry. So next slide, please. sorry, I forgot. I should do this as well. Okay. So, so this image that you see, I'm explaining about this, that when the state already observed the situation, there are lots of protests. Also, there were a lot of people waiting for the housing that this demands would not be fulfilled. They actually allowed, it was a law that lasted 1 year, to extend the panel blocks. So the state organizations would install this kind of metal structures, frames, and then each family could finish their extension on their own cost. So this actually led to very chaotic situation afterwards, which continued after the breakup of the Soviet Union, where Georgia was undergoing several civil wars, and this was parallelly also happening. So next slide, please. So what we received was this kind of very chaotic actually erasure of the original panel blocks, the facades, where each dweller has adjusted their living spaces to themselves rather than adjusting themselves to the architecture and the apartments and the buildings. So how was it possible and why was it possible? So what happened, it's quite different from some countries of the post-socialist blocs, that in Georgia, probably 99% of the housing stock was privatized. So the dwellers who lived in the apartments became owners of their space. And also this radical change of the system of collective ownership into private ownership allowed them to make changes. Also the changes were necessary for heating reasons, for example, because the central heating was already abolished, so everybody had to adjust, like make new windows, heat their apartments how they could. So this became kind of a very typical landscape in the early 2000s and in the 90s in Tbilisi. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to show is just different examples of what kind of things have happened, there are different typologies to be observed. I'm really interested in this to study these typologies and kind of archive them, because this period is also part of our architectural history, which will probably disappear and will not be properly documented. And also it's very interesting to see how the people themselves are changing and what can we learn out of that. So this is for the breakout rooms afterwards. And yeah, you can observe like all sorts of loggias, new balconies, extended balconies. Next slide, please. So yeah, just like very kind of also many times dangerous structures. Yeah, just like balconies like this. Next slide, please. And just to show you this very contrastic landscape, urban landscape of Tbilisi is like you see this panel block and this very informal kind of barracks, like very and this is how the entire city is like. So next slide, please. So what we received afterwards, we received the mikrorayons or large housing estates or Plattenbausiedlungen, where, like in this image, the church is the newest building, actually. So, yeah, as churches were not part of the large housing estates. They were built afterwards. Next slide, please. Yeah, also I wanted to show you one example because as I already mentioned, I'm one of the curators of the Tbilisi Architecture Biennal, and we, during our first edition in 2018, we actually touched this topic of informality, and then in 22 we continued. So just to explain that we have different kind of stories. For example, this is a former sanatorium where the internally displaced people from Abkhazia have been living more than 30 years. So this kind of cases are also transformation of buildings everywhere in the city. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you also some examples of urban gardens that have been also created in these neighborhoods. Also it's very interesting how not only the buildings transformed, but also the population, the people, the neighborhood, and the people who live in this neighborhood has also changed. And many people who come from the regions or rural areas, they kind of bring their own contexts and plant their own trees, what they are used to, like back home. Next slide, please. So you can see all sorts of this kind of urban gardens, also with wine, like wineries. Next slide. Yeah, and like sometimes like it's not even accessible. The ground floors are so chaotic or so much like privatized that the ones who live on the ground floors, they create their own private gardens, and even sometimes they have animals inside. Next slide. Yeah, just in this case, like this person, if you don't look up, you think it's maybe like some kind of village where this is situated. Next slide. So yeah, one of also something that I wanted to show in very short time, I think I'll be exactly 10 minutes. Also, like the appearance of garages that was also mentioned here today. The garages were not part of the original planning, rather the dwellers have built them out of security reasons to keep their cars because in the 90s the criminal level was really high. But afterwards, these garages gained a different use. A lot of them are abandoned, but a lot of them have very different typologies, like open living rooms, like this one, or their pharmacies, bakeries, workshops, furniture workshops, wherever you would think of. So I think I will finish here, and if you're interested, you can talk to me afterwards in the breakout rooms or answer some questions. So thank you so much.